We are starting a new topic this week, and the new unit that we're going to be covering is diseases, or we can also refer to it as the immune system. So, our essential question as we always start new units is how can we prevent bacterial and viral diseases from spreading? And our learning target, there are two of them. Our I can statements are I can explain the difference between infectious and non infectious diseases, and I can also explain the antibody antigen complex. Okay, moving right along over to our PowerPoint. And this is going to be in Google Slides that I have shared with you. I'm just going to go through a few of the slides today, and then we'll get into more as the next week comes. The immune system is a pretty amazing system, as you know. If we did not have our immune system, we would be sick every day. And this is sort of a unique time to talk about some of this and talk about the differences between bacterial and viral experiences, because we are definitely in a pandemic and we are dealing with a virus. Okay, if we look at the immune system, basically it is a system of complex set of defenses to protect the body from pathogens. And what is a pathogen? A pathogen is anything that's harmful that is going to enter the body. It can also be a disease-causing organism. So I like to think of pathogens as either viruses, bacterial, they could be parasites, they can be fungi, anything like that. And on the pathogen, there's something that is called an antigen. And that's what we're going to talk about more as we go on and talk about that antibody antigen complex. Okay, we do have some lines of defenses, first lines of defense, that try to resist the pathogens and sort of keep them out of our body. And the first is obviously our integumentary system, which is our skin. You may have learned about that in health. The skin is going to act as a barrier, and it prevents many of the pathogens from entering the body. But if you do have cuts and open sores, then that does lead to some of the pathogens that are able to enter. The respiratory system is another system of the human body that is sort of considered our first line of defense. It helps to trap pathogens. It has cilia and mucus that are going to line the nose and the throat area and the lungs, and it's going to help keep these pathogens out. If they do get in, maybe through something that we ate, we do have a digestive system that uses saliva. It's going to use enzymes, acids, and mucus also that are in the stomach to kill the bacteria that is entered. We have a circulatory system, and this is where you probably learned in health that one of the components of blood is white blood cells, and white blood cells really are like our, I like to think of them like as our military. They are in our body, and they sort of are like the military, and they go around and they try to engulf bacteria, and they try to help us feel better. They're there at the site of an infection, so they patrol the body and they try to destroy pathogens. If you have damage or diseased tissue, then that will lead to inflammation. You've probably heard a lot of talk in the news about inflammation. And if you have inflammation, then the white blood cells are attracted to that area, and they will try to fight the infection. Specific immunity. Specific immunity is when the immune system is going to work against a specific antigen by producing what we call an antibody. You may have heard of, again in the news, they've been talking about antibodies and testing people to see if they have antibodies, because people that have come in contact and have gotten sick from the coronavirus, their body will produce antibodies, so that if they come in contact with that same strand again, it has to be that same one. In other words, it wouldn't have mutated, then they would release those antibodies, and they would do a lock and key with that coronavirus antigen that is on the virus, and they wouldn't get sick from that. And that's how we're not sick again, 365 days a year. So what is an antibody? An antibody is a protein that attaches to an antigen, making it useless, because once it does the lock and key, then the antigen can't do its job of making you sick. And so the antigen is that foreign molecule that comes into the body. It's right on the pathogen. So again, it can be viral or bacterial or a parasite. Any one of those forms, fungi. And you could see here we have the picture where we have the antigens and there are the marker molecules on there, and they'll come in and do the specific lock and key with the antibody. Now this system is very complex and we won't go into all of that. It's just too advanced and we don't learn that for living environment, but you would maybe learn about it more if you take biology in college. Okay, active immunity. Active immunity, this is when the body makes its own antibodies in response to an antigen. So again, to the thing that comes in that is foreign to us and invades our body and makes us sick, we have antibodies that are being made, and antibodies are proteins. So that's again goes with protein synthesis. Some of the antibodies are going to remain in our bloodstream to fight later infections of the same pathogen. So if the same strand comes in and affects us, but we've already been sick with that same strand of, let's say, strep throat, we won't get sick with it again. Our body will immediately release the antibodies. They'll go to the antigen, they'll do the lock and key, and we'll never know that we've even been exposed to it. And so thank God for that. Otherwise, again, we would be sick every day. Vaccines provide a form of antigen to provide active immunity. So when we do get vaccines, they give us a little bit of the weakened or killed form of that infection and of that antigen, and it enters our body. It tricks our body to think that we're sick, but we're really not. Some of you probably know a little bit about this if you have the flu shot, and then your body will build the antibodies. So if you come in contact with the flu shot, then you won't be sick, is the hope, if they get the vaccine right and they predict for the right flu strain that's going to hit. And they usually have to predict for several of them. Okay, this is the last slide we're going to do, passive immunity. This is when antibodies made in another animal are introduced into the body. So it's passive. It's not that your own body has made it. It's been introduced. And active is when you actually do get sick and then you make the antibodies. And we've all been sick, so we've all made these antibodies to protect us against being sick with that same strand again. Passive immunity does not last as long as active immunity. And many of the vaccines or boosters that you might get have to be taken more than once. Like the flu, you have to get that shot every year because it's going to sort of code for whatever different strand that they sort of predict that can happen. Sometimes they predict the wrong one will hit us. And when it does hit us, then we know that the vaccine really is useless because it's the wrong one. And many people are getting that flu.